All the things are bad. There are no good things.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/EchoplexMedia. You can support this project. Go to echoplexmedia.com, click the support link at the top of the page. Find your favorite place, find your favorite way. Up to you. I'm producer Dave. You can find me on Grindr.
And I am HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social.
Fuck yeah. Well, I did a Ben Shapiro clip before we started, but this is actually not a Ben Shapiro. This is, I guess, like the D team at Daily Wire. Sorry, my brain's not working. Andrew Klavan. He is, I don't know. I don't really watch his content. He's just like some ghoul that every once in a while pops up on like my feeds for the Sunday show saying something dumb. So I thought maybe we could take a look at him. I don't know if you know that the Daily Wire and Candace Owens had a bit of a falling out over her. Mm-hmm. Some of her stuff was indeed anti-Semitic, and some of it was, I guess I would say like anti-Semitic dog whistling disguised as criticism of Israel.
Yeah, like she's, I would say she's not a fan of Palestine, but also not a fan of Israel.
Maybe just doesn't like fucking people that live somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so of course, where do you go when you have a falling out with Candace Owens? You go to Triggernometry. This is Andrew Klavan and Constantine Kitson. This Constantine Kitson. And also ran Non-Oliver. And this is Candace Owens versus the Daily Wire.
There were things going out over our air that she was saying that were being at least received, I have to say, as being deeply anti-Semitic. The phrase,
I'm sorry that you received it that way. That's funny. It's like, why are you punching yourself?
Trope. We believe this. We believe that Christ is king. I also believe in the cross of Christ, but if you burn the cross on somebody's lawn, it's no longer the cross of Christ. It's just a vehicle, a symbol of your toxic hatred.
Well, at least he's against cross burning. He might get fired for that.
How is that used in an anti-Semitic way?
Well, I've gotten tweets that say Christ is King Jew. You know, so that's kind of a giveaway for me. You know?
I mean, it's not funny, but
Andrew Klavan, welcome back to Triggernometry. You're one of our favorite ever guests. We love having you on the show over and over. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to see you guys.
I bet you said that to all the ghouls.
We've got lots to talk to you about, as always, movies and culture and politics and stuff. I have to ask you, though, about the Daily Wire Candace Owens thing. Yeah. You're the only one of the Daily Wire hosts, as far as I'm aware, who said anything about it. What happened?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I just naturally thought it was going to be a big news story. It had to be addressed. So it became, I knew it had happened, but it became public about an hour before I went on the air. So I went on the air and addressed it, which is what I do with everything. And at the end of what turned out to be like a 40-minute segment, usually in your ear, you hear the producer say, good job, or let's move on, or let's do this, or whatever. I hear just dead air, nothing. And then I hear, no one else talked about this. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. What does it mean to not say something about it? And ever since, I've been the target of what they call the Groypers. I just call them Nazis because that's what they are.
Whoa, what's this guy doing up? What's this guy doing being all fucking normal?
Because my interactions with Candace were all in the makeup room and were always incredibly friendly. I spotted her as a huge talent years before she took off. I mean, I saw her on YouTube when she had no followers virtually. She had a small following. I just thought that's one of the most talented broadcasters I've ever seen. I had her on my show. I told the Daily Wire to hire her, which they didn't, which cost them a lot of money because when they hired her later. So I don't have any feelings about her whatsoever. And it's not a personal thing. And it's also not even, I don't even know her heart or what's in her mind. So I'm not attacking her at all.
Wait,
but
what?
there were things going out over our air that she was saying that were being at least received, I have to say, as being deeply anti-Semitic. So that Nick Fuentes, who is a virtual Nazi, I mean, there's no space between him and what a Nazi would be saying, was praising her to the skies.
That means he's not a virtual Nazi. He is a Nazi.
And that assumes that he's real.
Yeah.
You believe in Nick Fuentes. How cute.
Nick Fuentes praises me to the skies. I go out and say, no, I'm not on your side. I don't know.
I mean, he might also be like, lying about what he believes, in which case he wouldn't be like an actual Nazi, but there's not really any way to tell. So,
and I would suggest to you that if you're willing to spread that kind of rhetoric for money or fame, that it's a distinction without a real difference as far as like the impact.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess I would call that an actual Nazi.
Right.
Like even if they don't believe it, it's like, well, you're still an actual Nazi.
Like if you go have dinner with 3 Nazis, there's 4 Nazis now. Right.
Yep.
But there was nothing coming back. And so it was becoming uncomfortable to be on the same, station, the same venue where that stuff was coming out. And so without ever having any kind of personal animus toward Candace, or even knowing what it was she intended, I'm not even saying that was, how she intended it to be received. It simply became impossible to have a good feeling about this place that I helped build and that I love very much and that I'm very proud of, as an entity. And it was very painful to have that kind of stuff coming out over the air. And I did not want Nick Fuentes. I don't want Nick Fuentes' praise. I don't even want, I don't want him to have a happy day because of anything that I said. And so,
or you should just say you just don't want him to have a happy day and leave it at that, actually. That'd be good.
That was my basic reaction. And in that was involved the fact that some of this was being phrased in religious terms. And one of the ways this was happening was the phrase, Christ is King, was being used as an anti-Semitic trope. Now, as I said repeatedly on the show, as Jeremy Boring, who runs the Daily Wire, said repeatedly, we believe this. We believe that Christ is King.
Well, maybe little Ben doesn't.
Believe in the cross of Christ. But if you burn the cross on somebody's lawn, it's no longer the cross of Christ. It's just a vehicle, a symbol of your toxic hatred.
Well, to be fair, it isn't the cross of Christ anyway, because that would have been thousands of years old, unless it got petrified or something.
The way it was being used online as an attack on Jews.
You're using the symbol in a way that I don't like, therefore it's not the symbol anymore.
That's correct.
Got me some heat from people who felt like, what are you talking about? This is a totally innocent phrase. So there was a lot of blowback from it, and I don't know why no one else addressed it. I thought it was important to address it. I'd do it again.
I think little Ben addressed it.
No one asked me to address it.
Well, we're asking you now, and there was something I wanted to ask you about, Andrew, which is there is a kind of alternative theory that I've heard from various people, which is...
You mean your guests? Your guests?
anti-Semitism aside, really, Candace, as you say, is a very talented broadcaster. She looks fantastic on screen. She's very charismatic. She's great at communicating. And when the Daily Wire hired her, it was the right moment in which she was able to communicate, let's be honest, the ideas of people like Thomas Sowell and Larry Elder to a younger, different audience. And that was great. But then other issues started to come along and became the current thing, as they say on the internet, whether that was the war in Ukraine, then Israel-Palestine. And then it was kind of the case that she didn't really know what she was talking about. She wasn't covering those issues in
I
a way
would
that
suggest to you maybe she didn't know what she was talking about before.
Yep.
There is. Speaking plainly, that's what some people have said to me. And then it descended into, Bridget Macron as a man. And before you know it, Israel is discriminatory because there's a Muslim quarter in Jerusalem. And you just go, is this person really qualified to be commenting on these issues? Was it that, or was it specifically the anti-Semitism?
So, wait.
For me, it was.
From that sentence, I gather that as long as he agrees with someone, he thinks they're qualified to be talking about that issue?
I think so, yeah, but I don't know.
Okay.
I would say that, I'm not qualified to talk about, geopolitics, and I try to stay away from it. And if I was hired somewhere and started running my mouth off about it, no matter what I was saying, that might be grounds for my dismissal,
But what I'm saying is, the only thing that would cause him to check the qualifications of someone who he's listening to is when he disagrees with them.
I mean, that might be he might be because they're fucking wrong, though. I mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case with Constantine, but you might disagree with somebody at first. You'd be like, well, I disagree that, or that doesn't sound right to me. And then you check, you're like, that's wrong. And they do that enough times. You're like, oh shit, this person's talking out their ass.
But shouldn't you care if someone is telling you information, and even if you agree with it, shouldn't you care whether they're qualified to be telling you the information that they are?
I'm not sure what the qualifications are required to relay information.
Well, as a source of news, she's,
right? But what are
Candace Owens isn't just spreading information on her online account. She's acting as a source of news from an organization which claims to be, a news organization.
Right, but what are the qualifications for your local news anchor? Are they a journalist going and gathering the story, or are they just reading off the teleprompter?
Well, the information that they're saying came from a news organization that has qualified journalists.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, though, is you're acting like this is not about the individual. So, I mean, most of the time, it's not about the individual. I can relay information that I didn't personally gather myself.
Well, what I'm saying is
I'm really glad we're having this discussion, by the way.
Constantine gives me the impression that he just will trust anyone about anything as long as he agrees with it.
Maybe. I think one of the first things that tips you off to be skeptical about somebody is that they're saying a bunch of crap you don't think is true or that you disagree with, though.
Sure, but even if I agree with something, I'm not going to listen.
This is a fun circle. Let's get out of this circle.
It was the stuff that was being taken as anti-Semitic. I mean, she had been saying stuff that I've said on the air I don't think is true, like the moon landing was fake, and what was the other one? I can't remember, but the Macron one is a perfect example of things that I just thought, 9/11, she was hinting was kind of an inside job, and these things don't make sense. I've actually researched.
But before Daily Wire hired her, they could have found out that she was saying stuff like this. I don't understand the thing here. It's not like she showed up at Daily Wire and started spouting off wild conspiracy theories on her first day from out of fucking nowhere, dude. What the fuck, man?
Yep.
About the moon and 9/11 only because they were so prevalent, and they don't make sense to me. But at the same time, I don't feel uncomfortable that someone that I'm not connected to is saying those things on the air.
But you are connected to them.
Start saying things that, they're on the borderline. There's always a way of dodging out of these things. I was just asking questions, or I was just expressing the fact, my feeling that Christ is king. Even if you're dodging them, it seems to me that you would want to make sure that people don't mistake what you're saying for this hatred that has certainly done, in my opinion, just about enough damage. I think we've had just about enough anti-Semitism as we need. I think anti-Semitism is just about topped off. You know,
Well, there's plenty of people who disagree
I don't know. Hold my breakfast cereal, friend.
with you, Andrew. I'm going to be honest with you.
Apparently so. To me, my supply of anti-Semitism is just well overdone,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that I'm ready to move on to some like obscure group that we can hate without meaning anything. But
What?
that was the thing that just made me uncomfortable. That's when
I believe there's no shortage of obscure groups for right wingers to hate.
Daily Wire specifically.
Yep.
problem with entertaining people. I don't have any problem actually with people who say things that I consider outlandish, you know, to please their audience. It's like it's part of show business. It's not my part of show business, but I understand what that is. But yeah, anti-Semitism is bad stuff, as we now see on our campuses, and it's
Wait, what?
it's
No.
kind of a joke to me that Hamas, who oppresses women and would kill gays, and leftists who say they support women and gays, and Nick Fuentes, a guy who just hates Jews, that they're all on the same side.
What?
No, they're not. What? No.
Okay, so
You could be for Palestinians without being for Hamas. Like,
So-
this is, again, like someone equivocating between Palestine and Hamas.
So Hamas is, for, better or for worse, probably worse, the governing body over the West Bank, or of Gaza. I'm sorry, Gaza. And for nation states, you have to deal with them, but that's not the same thing as like. I think that the Netanyahu regime is dropping a lot of bombs on people and killing people, well past what we would even call revenge for what happened in October. I'm not sure that that's a statement of support of Hamas or any other political party within the fucking boundaries of the place being fucking bombed to smithereens.
Yeah, like if you are killing babies, you're not taking revenge, because a baby can't do anything to you that you need to take revenge over.
Right. It's collective punishment is what you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah. That's supposed to be a war crime.
Yep.
And it makes me feel like the anti-Semitism is.
I also hate when they drag out my fucking queer identity as a prop in their crusade against people they think have the wrong fucking imaginary friend. That shit drives me crazy.
Yep.
It's like, oh, you like Muslims? Well, they throw you off a building in Saudi Arabia, and I'm like, well, is the guy down the street going to throw me off his house? Should I be a dick to him? What are you talking about? like, obviously not.
I believe it's the sign of something much, much deeper in society.
Yeah, I find it very interesting how we've kind of seen a resurgence of it. I always compare anti-Semitism to herpes. It's always there. And then at a particular moment, especially when society is going through a turbulent period, you then see it come to the fore. I guess the question that I really want to ask, Andrew, is just a clarification on this Christ is King. How is that used in an anti-Semitic way?
Well, I've gotten tweets that say "Christ is King Jew," so that's kind of a giveaway for me.
Yeah.
And the same person who says Christ is King also sends me a picture of Hitler. So to me, that's a giveaway. But for instance, if you're in an argument with Ben Shapiro, and you're in a political argument with Ben Shapiro, and your answer is Christ is King, what does that even mean? What does that mean? And
Well, are you having a theological argument? I mean, I'm not a fucking theologian, and I don't think Christ is king. I'm fucking highly skeptical that the person as described in the Bible existed or whatever. But if you're having a theological argument, that's not necessarily a problematic thing to say just because Ben Shapiro happens to be Jewish. There's a lot of other contexts that one would want to pick up on there.
Yeah, so it's in the same vein of like the people saying like, oh, if you're saying from the river to the sea, then you're saying something anti-Semitic. It's like, no, not necessarily. Like, you can say that and not mean it in an anti-Semitic way.
Right. Every people has that. Like, literally, America has sea to shining sea. Like every people has some version of like, from this place to this place. This land is your land. This land is my land. I mean, it's
But like, yeah, you can use it in a way that is anti-Semitic, and you can use Christ as king in a way that is anti-Semitic. It just depends on the context around what you're like, how you're saying those phrases, you know?
Right, I suppose so. And it's like it takes some digging into what has the person said previously. And Christ is king, you could also be using it in an anti-Hindu or anti-Muslim or anti-Scientology way or whatever. You could be using it to like demean someone else's faith or like religious identity because of the power, especially in the United States, the power that Christianity has, like politically and culturally.
Yep.
This is gonna be a trudge.
Means exactly what it seems to mean, is that you are outside, you're rejected, you are not the people of God any longer, which by the way, theologically, I disagree with on top of everything else. And for me, this is a theological issue. I have to say, I have studied anti-Semitism a lot. I mean, I've looked into it very deeply because
from Michael Knowles, fucking Matt Walsh. You don't have to look too far. Who's in the next cubicle over at the fucking wire, dude?
Realized that I was a Christian, and I'm a Jew. I'm raised a Jew. I'm a Jew by race. And when I realized I was a Christian, one of my biggest resistances was that 2,000 years of Christian anti-Semitism, which has been a real part of the religion and a really sad part of it. And the thing that I believe sort of blew up in Europe's face when the end of Europe came. And so I needed to, before I could move on.
When did Europe end? Does he mean World War II?
I think so.
I hope so, because otherwise he means that great replacement shit, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if he meant the end of Europe. It'd be great if these were if there were interviewers there who were good interviewers to be like, when you say the end of Europe, what do you mean? That'd be a good follow-up question. You're not going to get that from either of these people. Constantine may be thinking it, but he ain't going to say it. And Non Oliver is probably just thinking about, like, the monkey that fucking bashes the fucking symbols together.
That's just always playing in his head.
Yeah.
I need to separate Christian anti-Semitism from Christian love, which I thought was what I was actually had come to believe in. And there is simply no question that by the time Germany was formed, say in the late 1800s, hatred of Jews and hatred of Christ were the same thing. That people were saying, guys like Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, were saying, we've all been turned around by this Christianity because now we're favoring weak people instead of strong people. Obviously morality should be for the strong.
What?
It's all been turned around. And the people who did that were the Jews, and the way it got into our society was through...
Actually, this guy does understand fucking historical anti-Semitism pretty well. I thought he was just going to say, he's like, I don't know, I don't like the Muslims and they're anti-Semitic, but fucking this guy does actually have some fucking understanding of anti-Semitism historically. It's pretty good.
But he said hatred of Christians and hatred of Jews was the same thing.
So I don't know about the hatred of Christians, but the thing he was saying about how the strong will survive or whatever, and the problem being that the weak have all the power, that's been a long-standing like Christian anti-Semitic trope in Europe and United States. So
yes, but I'm wondering about the part where he said hatred of Jews and hatred of Christians was the same thing.
I'm wondering about it too, but I'm just gonna not worry about that too much, because he like I said, he's got a pretty decent grasp. Like most people wouldn't be able to recall that, pull that up. Even though I know it, right, I wouldn't recall it or pull it up. He may have prepared or been sent a list of questions, I'm almost guaranteeing that Constantine and Non Oliver, if it's somebody they like, they're like, here's the questions we're going to ask you.
Christ. And so it was actually, it sounds contradictory, paradoxical, but it's not. That the hatred, my joke is that the hatred of Jews is always really the hatred of the big Jew. I think that, Christianity, which is an extension of Judaism, Christians believe it's the completion of Judaism, is not a natural thing. It's a thing that says, take care of the weak. that women have equal rights. No, they're not there for your use. They're there for your partnership, These are things that were not natural to the people who became Christians. And I think it became a battle inside their hearts. And I think the thing that kept anti-Semitism alive long after the historical reasons that came out of the split between Christianity and Judaism, which was just an historical fact, long after those things had been healed, it kept it alive because people did not want that big Jew in their heart telling them to be charitable, telling them.
I think he means God, right?
I think either he means God or he means Christ, maybe. Okay, so did he say hatred of Jews and hatred of Christ are the same thing?
I swear to you,
is that what he said?
I think he means God, but he hasn't said any of those things. I think he means God. At first, I thought he just meant Larry David, because that's like one of the most famous Jewish people in the world and a very funny and talented man, but obviously he doesn't mean Larry David.
Yeah, he said the big Jew, but does that mean Christ or does that mean God?
I think we should talk about it for a while. maybe he'll tell us.
You can't just march into other people's countries. No, you can't just carry women off and declare that they're theirs. All these things that had permeated European society against the will of the tribes who were converted. And so I really do believe that to be a Christian and an anti-Semite is a contradiction in terms.
Oh, absolutely, because we're all made in God's
image.
Why?
I mean, anybody can be a bigot. That's not contradiction. And it's like saying people who are really this is a no true Christian fallacy, essentially, right? It's like,
yep,
it's not contradictory. You can be any religion and be a bigot. Like, there are probably Jewish people who are have Jewish ancestry who spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that too. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Has it surprised you seeing all these things, seeing a rise in anti-Semitism? The thing that I've found shocking, Andrew, and I've always somebody who's got my fair share of anti-Semitism, particularly when I'm the fact that I'm not Jewish, but everyone thinks I am. So
that's the worst combination. We're looking Jewish and not being Jewish.
If it's any consolation, that happens.
Why is that a bad combination? What are you talking about? That's not funny. Whatever.
I get called secret Jew, sneaky Jew, fat Jew. That was out of order, all right?
You've lost weight, mate.
You stepped over the line.
Yeah, that's when you really pushed it. But,
that reminds me of one time somebody called the Majority Report and called Sam Cedar a crypto Jew. And they about died laughing because the man's last name is Cedar.
Yeah, he doesn't hide that.
It is like the co-host was like, his face is on the screen, sir.
People who I used to, enjoy what they did on Twitter and be like, oh, that's, that particular take. I mean, that's a little bit out there, but, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And then you go on their Twitter nowadays, you're like, holy, what?
The Jews did 9/11? What?
Yeah, and just...
That's not new.
Not even that, just being like, yes, what do you expect from Jews? I'm going, what the hell is happening?
Yep. And
wait a minute. So he's surprised that the people who he admired and followed on Twitter and thought had really good takes on, probably black people or something, also don't like the Jews.
Yep. Maybe he's surprised that Twitter and specifically is so anti-Semitic, but why would you be surprised about that? That's
not what he said, though. I mean, I'd like to address, what he said is I had these people that I followed who I thought had good takes, and now they don't it's well, so many of the people you thought had good takes, all of a sudden you think have bad takes on the Jews. Maybe you should examine more broadly and in more detail the kinds of people you follow, the sorts of things you're interested in. That's just my take.
Believe in a larger context, putting this in a larger context, we have been taught to look at the history of the West, just take the West alone, without the concept of God in it. To talk about literature without talking about God, even if you don't believe in God, this has nothing to do with faith. I mean, even if you don't understand.
So, now he's going to conflate the idea of so I already know what he's going to do. I've seen, not him, but I've seen other people do this. They're like, well, you can't really have the West without God. And it's like, well, what you mean is that if you're looking at the history of what we call the West, Christianity has been ascendant in
Mhm.
the West. And that's very different than being like, well, it's God. It's like, well, no, it's Christianity. Like,
Yeah, the two can be separated from each other. Like you can have Christianity without Western culture, and you can have Western culture without Christianity.
right. And you can have, and you can acknowledge the impact that Christianity has had on Western culture without thinking God did it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
sort of like that. That's sort of like what the study of history tends to do, I think.
Yep. Yeah, and there were plenty of other factors in the history of Western culture other than Christianity.
Oh, yeah, obviously. Electricity, for example.
Entirely. The Christian concept, which is ultimately
Circles, triangles.
rooted in Judaism, has shaped the to me, the greatest culture that ever existed. The culture of Europe from 1500 to 1914 was, I think, the greatest human culture that has ever existed on Earth. Entirely.
What do you suppose happened in 1915 that he doesn't like?
That's a very specific timeline.
Right, because around 1500 and then exactly 1914, I got to wonder what happened in Europe in 1915 this motherfucker didn't like.
So that timeline includes some really, really bad things.
Yes, many wars, in fact.
Wars, slavery, women couldn't vote. Let's see, the Civil War over slavery.
I thought he was saying Europe, but he may have said the West. Not to mention just colonialism more broadly, like in colonialism being done in an industrialized way.
Yeah, well, certainly Europe was involved in the slave trade.
Yes.
So yeah,
but I just wonder what happened in 1915. Like it's because around 1500 is like, okay, sure, whatever. But then 1914 specifically, I just feel like something. What the fuck happened in 1915?
Woven with this philosophy and this religion, and we've been taught to understand things without it. So you don't really know where you are at any given moment. And then these things. Listen, a long, long time ago, in the 1970s, I published a novel in which I referred to my generation of Jews as holiday Jews.
Huh?
And what I meant by that was the Holocaust had so shamed the anti-Semites that decent people just didn't do it, but that would pass. That's what I meant. It's a holiday, hooray, but it'll come back. But
there's just so many. Oh, I thought he meant like just that they like admire. I thought because if somebody says to me like, oh, I'm, like somebody might say, oh, I'm just a holiday Christian. That just means I like go to church on fucking Easter and fucking Christmas Eve or something, right? That's what I thought that meant. That it just meant like that they're not really observant except like, Passover. Well, I forget what the other Rosh Hashanah, like on the high holidays or whatever. I thought that's what that would have meant, but I don't know. I just assumed that's what it meant, but no, he's like, we're on holiday from anti-Semitism. Okay,
because it is interwoven. It is the shadow side.
Also, like anti-Semitism has existed throughout that time. Like it's not like it went away. Admittedly, like, yeah, there was less anti-Semitism, certainly less like institutionalized anti-Semitism once Germany lost the war. But like that didn't eliminate anti-Semitism.
right. It may have, and I don't even know if like I don't even know to the extent to which it reduced it. I think it made it, just gave it a dog whistle. You know what I'm saying? They just got a better dog whistle because there was like a big rift in the Republican Party in the post-World War II era about like open anti-Semitism. Like within the John Birch Society, there were people that were very anti-Semitic and people who didn't like that at all. And so like it didn't go anywhere. No.
Faith in the real Christ, the Christ of love, the Christ of unity, the Christ that says you are born in God's image and therefore we are, connected in some essential way. And it's the dark shadow of that idea is "Get out of my house, Jew," which is how it got into the house in the first place, And so it will never go away as long as the West remains the West. And I think that all you can do is stand up to it and call it what it is. It is a hatred of God,
Okay, so he's not. He wasn't saying that anti-Semitism had disappeared, but he was saying that like people weren't openly anti-Semitic, which I disagree with. Like,
right,
tons of people were very openly anti-Semitic.
Yes.
But again, now he's saying like it's a hatred of God. Like, I don't think that's true. You can be anti-Semitic and not hate God.
Yeah, it's really fucking this is really fucking weird. I think I kind of understand what he's trying to do, but like a better way to say it would be like, this is this stands in direct contrast to my my Christian beliefs or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? That'd be like a better way for him to say it versus like, oh, if you're anti-Semitic, you must hate God. Like, that's weird.
Yep.
I would assume that anti-Semites believe in God to hate it in the first place.
Yeah.
I love is John Wayne on his deathbed. He was always being accused of being a bigot, and a friend of his came over who was Jewish, and his son joked with the guy and said, he didn't want to see you because you're a Jew, just kidding around with him. And John Wayne said, the only Jew I don't want to see is the other Jew. I think that's who they hate. They hate the other Jew.
Wait, what?
And you can't understand.
John Wayne is a bad example. That guy was a piece of shit, though.
They keep trying to say, well, it's because Jews are successful. But the Jews of Russia weren't successful. They were in these little shtetls and they killed them anyway. They say, well, it's because the Jews want to be off on their own. But the Jews of Germany didn't want to be off on their own. They wanted to assimilate. They thought of themselves as German. All those other explanations simply do not explain why this thing is deathless. And it's deathless because Christ is king, because Christ actually is king. And I think that they hate that. They hate the fact that we are called upon to do something that is unnatural to our flesh, which is love one another and try not to kill each other all the time, and give, leeway to women.
So wait, he's saying that Christians hate that they are called upon to love one another, so they hate the Jews?
Yeah, that's it. He's trying to just say that, like, and if he would just say that, I'm a person of faith and I believe in, I'm a Christian and I think this goes against my Christian values, to be hateful in this way. He could have just said that and it'd make fucking sense. I don't know why he keeps like trying to make it like more poetic, I guess, or more like, he just tries to say it in more words, make it seem like it's more profound essentially than it is.
Yeah.
And remember that even though it's a wonderful thing that we live in a society where the lucky and the successful can be so lucky and so successful, more successful than ever before, not to forget that, some people fall behind and sometimes it's their own fault. Sometimes, they're there because...
Isn't that a bad thing?
The right things.
Do you want someone to be able to be so lucky that they can just have all the money?
Well, I mean, I think he's talking about that specifically in relation to like anti-Semitic tropes about banking and entertainment, though.
Okay, but he would agree with that. Like, he would say, like, yeah, we want a society where one person can own half the wealth.
I have not consumed enough of his content to know that, and I've consumed a lot more of it, I think, than you have. So I think that maybe that's a pretty bold statement.
He works for the Daily Wire.
It's a pretty bold statement on your part about somebody you know very little about.
We have to care about them as well, and that's a big pain in the neck, and not something that was true of every culture before us.
Andrew, this is why you're one of our favorite guests, because of the depth of analysis and
No. That was fucking academic window dressing right there. That was all that was. He was just trying to act like he was fucking more profound than he was. He could have one more time. He could have just said, "My faith in Christianity is such that I don't think it's appropriate to be a hateful bigot." Boom, done.
to drag you back into the tabloidy
please.
stuff. But the one thing that I will be honest, as someone who's an admirer of everything you guys have built at the Daily Wire, that did trouble me a little bit is this gagging order thing and, you know, people not being allowed to say what they think and all of this other stuff. And I think, you know, if there is a fair critique, it's that perhaps, you know, new media, which is what we all do, the promise of it was it's the place where everyone can be free and say what they think. And now people are coming together to collaborate under an umbrella. And eventually you get a company policy essentially on what people are and aren't allowed to say.
But what are you, dumb motherfucker? Like, yeah, they do that on Triggernometry. They're not gonna hire me.
Yep. Yeah, like that exists in literally every form of media.
Right. Outlets have a particular point of view, and if you go too far outside of that point of view, you're likely to be looking for a new outlet to work for.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's fucking the New York Times, ABC, CNN, the Daily Wire, the Majority Report, the David Pakman Show, fucking Joe Rogan Experience. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter where you're working.
Yep.
Say so. Can you shed any light on that side of things? You know, why is there a gagging order? And is there a kind of like, you know, these are the Overton window is now enforced at a company level? Again, some people might say.
So I actually know this sounds terrible. It sounds like I'm making this up. I actually don't know anything about the gag order except what I've seen on Twitter. You know, I don't talk to him about those things because I wouldn't be allowed to talk about them on air, and I don't want to lie to my audience, so I just don't ask them. You know, as I understand it, there is a lot of mediation going on in the background that I'm just not privy to, and I don't even know.
Yeah, it's because he knows how to toe the line, right? This guy toes the line at the Daily Wire, and to be fair, he's not the one out there on the edge saying like hyper-inflammatory things. He's a right winger. He says right wing things, but he's not out there fucking like repeating like men's rights activist talking points. So far as I can tell from what little I've seen of him, right? He's not out there opposing the Civil Rights Act, so far as I can tell from what I've seen of him. He's like more like a sort of a center, not center like moderate politics, but like he's like the center of the new conservative movement. He's right in the middle of that. So
true. I mean, I'm not saying it's not. I just don't know whether it's true or not. But on the larger issue of the Daily Wire is not social media. It is essentially an on-air magazine. And while you can invite anyone on, you know,
essentially an on-air magazine, so like a media outlet.
Yeah, it's like this.
They put me in a fucking magazine.
Fuentes on and say, okay, say your piece, pal, and let him talk. We don't have to hire him, and we don't have to pay him to say those things. And when people are saying things that we can no longer support, I mean, the example I gave on the air is if I woke up one morning and said, you know, this abortion idea, I love this abortion idea. I think you should be able to abort your child until he's 5. You know,
Listen, I was a teacher. There's some kids who should have been aborted at the age of even older.
That's not called abortion. That's called murder.
But I mean, he's just saying that, like, you know, at the Daily Wire, if he starts being like talking, you know, what he would consider to be radical pro-abortionist, which he may think that there are people who believe that about like abortion, that you should be able to engage in infanticide, that his days there would be numbered. And that's true.
I would hope that any place that you worked at would not want you to continue working there if you were pro-infanticide.
Right, but I don't
know of anyone.
Right, that's not the point. I don't believe that's the point he's trying to make. I believe the point he's trying to make is that at the Daily Wire, if he were to go on there and start talking even more like bog standard pro-choice, pro-abortion stuff, that his days there would be numbered, because that's an editorial decision that would be made by the business or by the basically by little Ben and what's that guy's name, Jeremy, that they don't want to be putting that out there, and that's their right as a media outlet. Now, I think he, like you said, what he said there was dumb. He could have made that point without saying that dumb shit about aborting kids until they were 5.
Yeah, without the right-wing straw man.
There's no question. There's temptation there, but I would have to resign.
He's actually tempted to kill children?
I listen, Non Oliver is ostensibly a comic. He said that he was a teacher and he thought about it. First of all, teachers don't generally deal with children under the age of 5, right? Maybe preschool teachers do, but he's ostensibly a comic. He thought that was funny, but the thing is, it's not, right? So
yeah, so he's saying it's funny because when I was a teacher, the kids annoyed me so much that I wanted to murder them. He's saying that's funny. Right?
I think he thought he was cracking a joke, saying something in jest.
Okay. Yeah, hilarious joke.
As an honorable person, I would just have to say, guys, we're no longer on the same page. It is not, the Daily Wire is not required to let every person, to pay every person who wants to say what they have to say it. We're not social media. I believe that social media should be far more open. I mean, YouTube, for instance, I think should legally be required as a common carrier, just like the telephone company, to let every single person.
This is dumb as fuck. The YouTube is the endpoint, not the carrier.
Yep. Yeah. So what he's saying is, if I want to host literally anything that is legal to say, YouTube should have to make that available to other users.
Right.
That's stupid.
It's just it's a conflation of things that are not true, right? The common, and to be perfectly frank, Comcast, my internet provider, is not regulated as a common carrier like the electric company or the phone company is. So the idea that we should be regulating YouTube in that way before we even regulate the company that allows me to access YouTube and every other website on the internet, that's absurd on its face, because we haven't even done that with the actual carrier. The carrier of the data is Comcast, or for some people AT&T, and for very unlucky people Spectrum. And this is dumb. No, they're an endpoint. They're an endpoint. It's just because I can put something there doesn't mean that they're a common carrier, and that they should ever be regulated that way.
Also, wouldn't that mean that you would end up paying for them? Because if they're going to support stuff that can't be funded by advertising, you would have to pay them to do that, right? So he's saying he wants to pay to host his content on YouTube. Like, does he understand the implications of what he's saying, or is he just...
It's just a bog. It's just a bog standard new conservative movement talking point. That's what he's going to be doing, I think, this entire time, because that's what he does. That's who he is. He's not out there throwing bombs like Michael Knowles, right? He's out there kind of just very, very much the party line of the new, I guess we'll call it the new mainstream right.
Yeah. Well, saying, I don't want to have any sort of consequences for saying something that's racist or sexist or homophobic or transphobic or any sort of bigoted.
I think he would suggest to you that the consequences might possibly come from the Daily Wire, but not from that. It shouldn't come from YouTube, because he's making a distinction between the two that is actually fucking. I don't see much distinction at all, because they host videos and shit on the Daily Wire. They're both just private media entities.
Yeah. Is he aware that you can actually host your own content on your own website?
He doesn't really get in, as he said earlier, he doesn't really get into the inner workings of the Daily Wire. He's not that interested. Okay. And to be fair, for him, like this is like a fucking cushy job, right? Because he's not like out there making controversy. He doesn't come up very often. He just does a show. He gets paid by the Daily Wire for his show, and he probably has a pretty nice house and whatnot. I mean, he's got a good gig. I mean, I don't like him, but he's got, out of all of them, he's probably got the best gig, because nobody knows who the fuck he is.
And speak, but we're not them. We're not a social media company. We're like a magazine. We have an opinion. We have a point of view, and we don't pay leftists to come on and do a show. And we're not going to pay pro-abortion people to do a show. We're not going to pay anti-Semites or anti-blacks or any other kind of bigotry.
Oh, that's not true. Now you done stepped in it. There's all kind of anti-black stuff on the Daily Wire. Candace Owens was hired as one of the good ones, essentially.
Yep.
Because she'll say anti-black stuff too, as is her right. She can't say to the Daily Wire anymore. Oopsie.
To do a show, even if that's not what's in their heart and it just sounds that way, I don't think we would pay them to do it. I cannot address what's happening behind the scenes,
Sure.
and it's just that I just don't know.
I guess
God, what a great job. How much money do you think that guy makes? That's fucking great. He probably makes like fucking, maybe low to mid six figures to just fucking do like a boring ass fucking standard conservative talk show where he just repeats like basic conservative talking points and no controversy around him, really. Fucking, that's not a bad gig.
It's not a bad gig money wise, but wouldn't it make you feel, I mean, like you or I, because we have like actual empathy
but he came
like proper understanding of things.
It's not like the Daily Wire invented him. These are his views, more or less.
Yeah, but like if I were in his position, I would feel like a monster.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a bad gig. Doesn't mean I think you should have it.
Okay.
the low resolution critique that people might have is, what if Fox News had fired a one of their hosts or presenters for saying something that wasn't company policy at Fox News?
Tucker Carlson.
I imagine some people might say, at the Daily Wire, there would be a lot of criticism of that. People would say this is cancel culture on the right and all the rest of it. That's kind of where I think that there's a fair discussion to be had.
I think the thing about cancel culture, and it is an interesting thing because
isn't the right like the king of cancel culture?
I think everybody,
in terms of like political ideologies.
I think cancel culture, as described by the Triggernometry people, is just harsh criticism of people in public based on what they've said in public. So I think fucking everybody does that.
But like, who's better at harsh criticisms of people than the people on the right? They'll criticize you for like literally anything. Like you could be on the left and you could say like, I think everyone should have access to medicine, and they'll fucking criticize you for that. They'll cancel you for that, for just saying that like, yeah, everyone should have access to medicine.
I'm curious what he's going to say about cancel culture here, actually, because he presents himself as like a fairly, not like a moderate politically, but moderate in his rhetoric. So I'm curious what he's going to say about cancel culture. I understand your position on cancel culture, that it's the thing that the right does to gay people or whatever. I understand.
Roundly, attacked for saying, right? I mean, sure. I don't think we have to let everybody just scream slurs at one another. But the thing about cancel culture was that it continually redefined common speech as bigoted and then killed people's careers for it. So if somebody
now I want some examples of this common speech you're talking about.
Common speech like the R word? Is that what he means?
I'm not. He's not going to give an example, right? But I'm loath to speculate again because I don't know that much about this Clavin guy. But this is again just a very bog standard, sort of very normal conservative talking point about the idea of cancel culture.
I mean, he was just talking about like how he doesn't want people throwing slurs around at each other, but like what common speech does he mean other than that would get you canceled?
He's still speaking. He might give an example. I think he probably won't, but I'd like to give him the opportunity.
Okay.
I think homosexuality is a sin. Suddenly you were hateful.
Oh, yeah, that's bigoted. I don't think you lose your job for that. It depends on what your job is. If your job, I don't know, just what is your job? What are you doing? Who do you work for? You work for a gay guy? I mean, what the fuck?
It's also inaccurate. Like, even if you're going to say, like, you have a literal interpretation of the Bible, then being a homosexual is not a sin. Like, homosexuality is not a sin. The act of homosexual sex would be a sin if you were a literal Bible and like if you were literally interpreting the Bible and considering everything from the Old Testament as well. But then, so would eating shellfish. So like if you're going to do that, you're probably just a bigot because like unless you're also, protesting Red Lobster rest their soul, you're probably just a bigot.
Lobsters don't have souls. Ask Jordan Peterson.
I meant the soul of the restaurant itself, Red Lobster. They're going out of business.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like it's the religion is being used as an excuse, like basically to shirk off your own personal moral failing. That in this case, it would be homophobia on like your religion, right? Like that it's not a decision that you've made, that you can just blame your religion for the thing that you've done, or the thing that you've decided to, or the poor moral reasoning you've engaged in around who people decide to have sex with or whatever.
Phobic, instead of communicating thousands of years of traditional theology. So it was that the Overton window was being closed like a little slit, that you had to be this leftist to get through. And that's how I would define cancel culture. The Daily Wire's never been like that. I mean, Jeremy, I know that some of the things that people say make his head explode. He has never, ever come in and said, you can't say that on the air to me. And he's never said, you have to say this. That's just never happened. And so I feel like at some point, a good example of this is Megyn Kelly, who was basically. But
he does understand that is what they did to Candace Owens, right?
Right. Well, but the problem here is that he's not going to just come out and say that it's the right thing to do to kick somebody off your network for being anti-Semitic, right? That's what he seems to be alluding to that, but he's not just going to come out and say that, I don't think.
Okay.
Always bigoted, which is obviously true. It's an obvious true thing because all of the left's comedians have done it and nobody ever said a word about it. But because it was Megyn Kelly, because she's a little bit right of center, I mean, she's not that far right of center, but she's a little right of center, it was reason to silence her. That sort of thing has never happened at the Daily Wire. And we have had real arguments, both on air and behind the scenes, always friendly arguments, but intense arguments about where we stand on things. And I think as a conservative website, which is what we are, a conservative on-air magazine, we have a pretty wide range of opinions. I mean, I think, we have said a lot of things and disagreed about a lot of things.
Yeah, everything from extreme right to extreme right.
That's not the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire is from the moderate right to
extreme right. Okay.
Maybe some of the stuff. Yeah, some of the stuff Michael Knowles and what's his name, Matt Walsh say. Yes.
Yep.
But it tends not to be like the Groypers, as he was saying. They tend not to. Messaging for like network wide. They tend not to engage in like fascistic rhetoric, just more broadly. Like
the people that they hire do, though.
It's not that they never do. It's that like dispositionally and like just if you take the broad if you take everything from the Daily Wire, it's to the right of like moderate Republicans or whatever, but it's not like way out there.
I mean, am I researching for myself?
Sorry about that. I just moved my hand out and hit the soundboard. They're not saying the shit that like Nick Fuentes or like Stefan Molyneux you were saying and whatever,
So again, I don't think we are required to say everything. I don't think we're required to pay people to have every point of view, but it's a pretty wide-ranging right-wing site.
So moving on, Andrew.
Yeah, he even said it's a pretty wide-ranging. That's what I would say. He actually had a better analysis of the fucking Daily Wire than I did. They got a broad range on the right wing. Like,
I don't know if I would completely agree. I mean, I guess it depends on how wide you think the right is. To me, the right as a political bloc is pretty narrow anyway. Like they all have fairly homogenous views about like most things. They really only, vary on like the extremity of those views. Whereas the left is a much more like you can be a left and be like you can be on the left and be like super like gung ho for capitalism, like even laissez-faire capitalism, or you could be like a communist and not even believe in like private property at all and still be on the left.
There are right-wing economic philosophies that are not
That are
fiercely
that different?
that are not fiercely capitalist, that oppose capitalism. There are parts of the anti-Semitic far right that believe that capitalism is an invention of the Jews. HK.
About culture and movies.
The success of the Daily Wire and its emergence as a conservative movie production house is fascinating.
The movies are fucking hot garbage. Get the fuck out of here.
Is it a good
Its
thing for
emergence as a
conservatives to make
conservative movie
art?
production house.
Are
I
we
mean,
in danger of
technically, yes, that is
entrenching
correct.
Whatever you think,
They
In much-
produce conservative movies.
In much the same way that Scientology is a television station.
just as
Yep.
the film industry has become increasingly polarized, so too has the news landscape. All of this means it's becoming increasingly difficult to get a balanced view of the world.
Ground News offers a solution by providing a comprehensive overview of news stories, complete with the political bias of
I'm
its
actually
source.
kind of
By
surprised
understanding
that
how
they are
Ground
willing to advertise Ground News. I'm not surprised that Ground News is advertising through them. I think it's actually a good strategy to try and reach, like, the kind of right-wing people that would watch this show.
So I think
but
Ground
I'm
News.
kinda
I think
surprised that they-
why are you surprised? Ground News wrote them a check. HK.
No, I'm not saying I'm surprised about that. I'm
No,
saying I'm
asking,
surprised.
why are
they
you surprised that they
accepted
would
the check?
why are you surprised that they're taking the check?
Because most conservative news outlets don't want their viewership to get more accurate news. I would say is kind of a general rule of thumb.
I'm guessing that almost none of the people that watch this are going to download, install, or use Ground News.
Probably.
frame the same story, you can break free from echo chambers and gain a more well-rounded perspective on the issues that matter. Go to ground.news/trigonometry to check them out.
Yeah, they also
Ground
HK.
News
They also, the other thing, it actually fits in really well with their branding because they would suggest to you that they are either centrists or very, very moderate conservative. That is like what Constantine has said in interviews before.
Yeah, it's inaccurate, but yeah, you're right.
So
that's how they would describe
So
themselves.
it fits in, and again, the money spends pretty well.
Yep.
We at Triggernometry use is the blind spot feed, which highlights stories disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. We rely on Ground News to gain a comprehensive
This part I don't
understanding
believe.
of the news stories with various sources and perspectives. Look at this story, for example. Ground News shows us there is zero coverage of this story from publications on the left.
Or this story. The bias comparison feature tells us how left-leaning sources cover the crowd's reaction, emphasizing Trump's controversial analogies and legal troubles, while publications on the right highlight the specifics of his speech.
Comparing perspectives and examining the facts is the best way to discover the truth, and you can't get this type of news analysis.
I'm not sure that just saying that the way that like Ground News, I don't even know if I I mean, whatever. It's better to look at it, I suppose, than not if you're like not being exposed to media that is outside of like what you already believe. But it's also like this side says this and this side says that, right? And it's like not really, you're not getting anything out of it, really. I can tell you.
I think it is valuable to know how the other side perceives different news stories, though.
So go to ground.news/trigonometry to get 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan, which unlocks all the features you see here. By becoming a subscriber.
I mean, if you think about how many people
directly
think that, like,
supporting them.
the opposite side is like just entirely misinformed, full of monsters, they have no values, all they want is to ruin America.
Their mission to bring facts, transparency, and trust back to the news. Are we starting to see the pendulum returning to the center? Both Constantine and I watched a movie called American Fiction. I don't know if you've seen it.
I did. I liked it.
I thought it was great.
It was magnificent.
It was everything that satire should be.
Right.
You know, it was absolutely on the knuckle. There were some jokes there that I was like, ooh, I haven't felt that in a long while.
Yep.
You know, are we starting to see a return to the good old days?
Well, what I feel is happening is that they have lost, but we haven't won. And I feel like we're Hannibal outside the gates of Rome and not moving in. If we had a billionaire, 2 billionaires, willing to invest in culture, and if we had people willing to start thinking about culture, because I don't believe culture should be right wing.
Excuse me, you guys have a billionaire who bought a social network. What the fuck?
Right, but I mean, hold on. Listen to what he said.
To start thinking about culture, because I don't believe culture should be right wing. I believe culture should be free. Culture expresses the soul of a nation, the soul of the moment. Sometimes you have culture that I think stinks, but it like abstract art, but it does express the lost soul of the nation in that moment. So we just don't have anybody who knows enough or cares enough to start to say, we are going to get in your face. Except the Daily Wire is trying. I mean, they are. Glenn Beck, I think, is trying. Angel Studios have done.
Oh, no. That's that fucking Sound of Freedom movie. Angel Studios. That fucking, that QAnon sort of adjacent fucking film. It was bad, too. It was bad.
I didn't watch it, but I know what you're talking about.
It was bad. It was like this. It was like a Save the Children rally as a movie.
Yeah,
enormously good job. They're the religious studio that has that app, The Chosen, which was a smash success, and they moved from that to doing a film called The Sound of Freedom, which is a good, solid thriller about saving children from trafficking. It has a kind of Christian undertone to it, which is good. But we haven't made the aggressive move that we should, which is like, screw you guys. You're wrong about everything. Now we're going to have an open, free culture where we say whatever we want to say.
Wait, but that's what, screw you guys. You're wrong about everything, but we're just going to have a fucking open Well, which is it? Like, I mean, y'all are free to burn up the Daily Wire's money making shitty movies and losing a ton of money on it. Fucking have at it, Haas. I don't give a fuck. But you're not sticking your finger in fucking Steven Spielberg's eye by doing that, friendo. You're just not.
Yeah, in what way are they not already doing that? They are saying, screw you guys, you were wrong about everything. Maybe not those literal words, but pretty much every conservative talking head would say that about the left.
Right, but he's talking about the culture. He's talking about the movie studios. That's what he's doing with that's what he's talking about, these movie studios. He's talking about.
But aren't they doing that?
Yes.
So, but in what way are they not doing exactly what he just said they should be doing?
I think he's just essentially describing, I feel like I'm defending this guy here, but he's describing it as a fairly new phenomenon, and that's true, actually. These right-wing movie studios are fairly new.
I think they evolved out of the Christian movie studios, which have been around for decades.
Maybe, but these are not necessarily attached to a church. I mean, the one that did a Sound of Freedom is a religious group, but Daily Wire is just right wing.
True, but those religious movie studios have been pushing conservative ideology for decades through these Christian movies. Not, as overtly as a movie like Lady Ballers, but a movie like God's Not Dead is very much a conservative movie, even though it's portraying itself as all we care about is religion. It's also very, anti-public education. It's very pro Christianity is the only right religion and should be in charge of everything. These kinds of movies have been around for a while.
The Netflix, the Disney that is doing the wicked stuff. In terms of Disney, they're doing the actual evil stuff that they're doing.
Oh, what are they doing at Disney?
Oh, I thought he was going to say they're doing actual Wicked the movie.
Yeah, they should.
Good moment. It is a good moment. It is.
Didn't they? Is that Disney?
I don't know. I wish I had a cup to show you of all the fucks I give about whether or not Disney has done a Wicked movie.
Will continue and get better. I don't know, because the right has a harder job than the left. The left wants to sell leftism. I want for the right to sell just reality, what life is really like.
It's a good point because you go to Austin and you go to Joe Rogan's.
I would say it's very much the opposite. It's much harder to sell leftism as opposed to like conservatism.
They're talking about
conservatism is real
they're
easy to
talking
sell.
about movies. The movie industry is liberal. They're not leftist, but they're
okay.
liberal.
They mean specifically about movies. Okay.
Yeah, they're showing a movie theater. HK, they're talking about movies.
Okay. Well, yeah, I would say that is probably just that like conservative movies generally are like really like heavy-handed. Like subtlety is not their specialty. Like conservatives.
Yeah, but a lot of like movies like there's a lot of movies that are like pushing liberal stuff that's not subtle.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you, but like there are also a lot of movies that are pushing liberal stuff and leftist stuff that are very subtle.
Sure.
What it essentially is it's not political. It's just the comedians make the jokes they want to make and the jokes they believe in, and then the audience laughs or they don't. And that's really what we need is we're going to make movies. It's not about left. It's not about right. We're just going to get back to doing what we used to do, the thing that...
yes, movies and entertainment has never had a political or societal message. We were... This is like the Gamergate shit, right? Where they're like, I don't want politics in my video games. I'm like, y'all remember Wolfenstein?
But also there are tons of movies that come out of Hollywood that are not political at all.
Like a lot of rom-coms tend not to have, like they are probably by design not really spreading a political message.
Yeah, but like they don't pay attention to those things. They pay attention to movies like Barbie, where it's like, yeah, that's overtly, liberal ideology. But like for every Barbie, there's like 10 other movies that like they don't even talk about at all that don't have any sort of political agenda.
And to be fair, the Barbie movie in some ways was poking fun at itself for its own like liberal ideology, right? It was
that's why it was really good.
Yes, it was like self-aware that it was some of what it was doing was silly.
Yes,
he loves, which is great stories.
Right.
That's all that we want. I don't want a right-wing movie. I don't want a left-wing movie, if I'm honest. I just want a great story.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is, I recently was watching, I was talking
If you don't want a right-wing movie, then probably The Daily Wire is the worst place to get your movies. All of their movies are extremely overtly right-wing, and they're very much not funny. I mean, it's a bunch of failed comedians writing trash movies trying to push a political agenda.
Also failed screenwriters.
Okay, yeah, failed screenwriters.
Show Baby Reindeer.
Yes.
And it's not a great show, but it's a really interesting show. And it's funny because it's about a bisexual being stalked by a fat psychopath woman, and he's upset by that because he wants to date a transsexual. Well, that's good conservative stuff for you. But
there's a way in which that could be fucking very funny, actually. Yes. You'd have to be pretty careful up in that writer's room about that. Make sure that's pretty funny without shitting all over people, right? Like,
yep.
Despair of all the characters. The obvious fact that they were trapped in this philosophy that says your sexual desires are your identity, which is actually the opposite of the truth. It's actually not the truth,
Wait, what? No. This is part of your identity. Everything about you is part of your identity. Your identity is the things about you. That's what I mean. I don't know what else to tell these people.
Like, this is coming from like an organization. I don't know about him specifically, but the organization is very gung-ho about the idea that like your gender is your identity. Like that's all your identity. And it has to match your genitals.
Well,
and there's no such thing as ambiguous genitalia.
Well, I don't want to. So they've done this for a very long time. They're like, oh, well, these gay people, all they're doing is fucking going around being gay. And it's like, all right, dude. I went shopping today. I didn't go gay shopping. I mean, I don't know, maybe I was gay shopping. I had a date with me going shopping today, so maybe it was gay shopping. I don't know.
It was so obvious that the writer,
Richard Gadd.
yes,
God, we know him actually.
Yeah.
he was honest enough to portray that. And I thought, well, to me, that's what an artist does. And he may not be a great artist, but I think it was a good show that actually portrayed that. And I think a little bit more of that is just a good thing. Like the New York Times every other day runs a story about sex in which every form of sex, except maybe married sex, is great.
Wait, what?
Except maybe married sex? Do people... What?
Do married people still have
Is the
sex?
New York Times saying that married sex is not great? What?
Right. What could be wrong? What could be wrong? You know, you want to put cigarettes out on your girlfriend? Great. You know, that's as long as she's consent. The two things that they worry about is consent and harm. You know, if the person agrees.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Is that not a good concept? Not a good like value judgment? Yeah.
I'm not even
consent and harm are like the only things that really should matter.
Well, I would even add the word enthusiastic for consent, because otherwise,
yes,
sex ain't going to be very fun.
Yeah, and harm being like, you know, permanent physical harm.
Or violation. Harm could just come from the violation of someone's consent or lack thereof.
Yeah, but what I mean is like, you know, if someone wants to be like whipped with like a what do you call that? Riding crop?
Well, that's consensual.
Thing. Like, that's what I'm saying is like, that's not like, it may be like harmful in that like you might make them bleed or something, but that's not like the harm we're talking about.
Hurt them seriously, it's okay. And I think, yeah, is there nothing you could do by consent that doesn't hurt somebody, that degrades them, that degrades yourself? You know, is sex the only willed human action that
some people want to be degraded? Don't kink shame.
Context, you know? And I think that like when you tell true stories about people, true things happen. When you tell stories that are actually true, you know, the truth comes out. And I think that was true in Gadd's show. And
when you tell stories that are actually the truth comes out, and that's what's true. Good job, dude. Fuck yeah.
Well, like, what would he think about like for example, the movie Boys Don't Cry? Do you remember that movie? It was Hilary Swank. She was playing, it was based on a true story of this trans guy who was murdered by a bunch of bigots. Like, what would he feel about that movie?
I have no idea. I've never seen it, and I don't know that he has. He doesn't seem like the Boys Don't Cry type.
That seems like the movie that they would all agree is like pushing some left agenda.
So I don't
know if they would have said that in the 90s when it came out.
I feel like he's maybe a big fan of the song Big Girls Don't Cry without understanding that the song is satirical in nature. I think that's more like where he's at. Just if I was going to guess.
And I appreciated that, even though I found it uncomfortable to watch. I don't actually want to watch a guy romancing a trans woman. But I thought, like, well, I'm you know, this is this guy's honest life, and he's being honest about it, and I'm always willing to show up for that.
And this is a great point, actually, because when people were like, oh, it's, you know, it's about, you know, the trans and whatever else, I was like, no, that's actually who Richard is. And I think if you care about art, you care about truth.
Right.
And if somebody's here and is like, I'm going to tell you a story about my life, and maybe it isn't for you, but I'm going to be honest with you about my story.
Right.
It's always going to be compelling, like you said.
That's right. And the problem has been not that we need more honest stories like that, but the fact is there are not a lot of honest stories about other people who aren't those things. And people
no stories about no there have been no stories about straight people ever. Every movie, the protagonist is fucking trans, gay.
That is one area of society that we just haven't really explored.
What
do the straights experience.
I've never seen a rom-com with a cis heterosexual man and a cis heterosexual woman having a maybe the opposite of a meet cute and then finding love later through like shared hijinks. Holy crap, we're gonna leave the podcast there.
That's a good note to end on.
So I was like I don't like him, but what he was talking about, like reality, like real stuff, I was like more when he was talking about what was going on with Candace Owens and the Daily Wire and stuff, I thought he was fairly measured. And when he was talking about like the Groypers and like Nazis, and when he mentioned that burning a cross was bad and all that, I'm like, oh, see, this is a pretty moderate guy. And then he just started running his fucking full mouth about movies. And I'm like, oh, could you stop? Could you stop?
Yep. Well, I mean, that's like he's worked for the Daily Wire, and that's what the Daily Wire is trying to do. So like, even if he fully believes that like the Daily Wire's movies are trash, like he's not going to say it.
That'd be really funny if he did. Like our movies aren't great, but at least
because they objectively are.
Our movies aren't great, but at least when there's trans people in there, they're the butt of a joke. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and like one thing that was so telling about like, you know, he was talking about how important truth was in movies. Their latest movie, Lady Ballers, like I watched an interview with Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring, who were talking about like how that movie came about. And they were talking about how they were trying to join women's teams, and the women's teams would tell them like, yeah, you can join a women's team, but you have to go through like hormone therapy for like this long in order to be able to qualify. And they were like, well, we're not really willing to do that. So they just made the movie fictional. Like it was going to be a documentary, but they're like, well, you know, they're not letting us do that in real life. So let's just make a fictional movie about doing this. And then we can complain that this happens.
I think it's really funny that they're going around telling people that.
Yeah. And it's like, you proved that it doesn't happen in real life. You proved it.
Or at least they couldn't induce its occurrence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like they tried to do the documentary and failed to do it. Why not actually report that to your viewers? I mean, because it doesn't match your political agenda. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
They did though in that interview that you mentioned. To be fair,
they did. Someone had to pry it out of them. But yeah, like,
all right. This was bad content. I think that it made us talk past each other quite a bit. Or maybe we just talked past each other quite a bit today. It could also be that I am sleep deprived and cranky. That could be it too, but I'm always sleep deprived and cranky because I fucking stream and podcast for a living. So that's just the state of being. But HK,
I mean, we're both sleep deprived and cranky then. So
HK, do you mind closing out the show? I was starting to try to get to the closing out the show part.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you're listening to the podcast, you're going to miss Red Light. So check us out live sometime. Red Light, it comes right after the song we're about to play, where we change the color of the lights and the contents of our drinks. And we talk about other shenanigans than what we talked about in the main show. If you want to support us, you can do that at echoplexmedia.com. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/echoplex, or you can support us at our store, eplex.store. Now, this is Boomers by Periscope.